Welcome to day 208. We are in Isaiah 58 through 63. Isaiah's been pretty awesome about history and then also about prophetic events. And hopefully you have your timeline going because we're going to add a lot of stuff to it today. A few things, I guess, not a lot. So let's get at it. What does God want? In chapter 58, 6 through 10, we've talked about this before. God doesn't necessarily want our sacrifices or offerings. He doesn't necessarily want fasting. He wants it done correctly. So in 58, 6 through 10, he tells us a little bit about that. No, this is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free. And remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them. And do not hide from relatives who need your help. Then your salvation will come like the dawn. And your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward. And the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. Then you will call the Lord. You will call, the Lord will answer. Yes, here I am. He will quickly reply. Okay, so it keeps going on. Feed the hungry, help those in trouble, and then your light will shine in the darkness. So the point is, there's always trouble until he comes again. There's always going to be trouble. And the things that are going on in our world, and especially our country, our own little world, there's always going to be trouble. We are to continue to help people who are in need. We can't help those who want to do evil. Sin 59, verse 4. No one cares about being fair and honest. The people's lawsuits are based on lies. They conceive evil deeds and then give birth to sin. This whole chapter is basically what's going on right now. Verse 8, they don't know where to find peace or what it means to be just and good. They have mapped out crooked roads, and no one who follows them knows a moment's peace. If that's not what's going on in our news today, I don't know what is. The news has totally distorted the truth, and they believe the lies. Okay? Verses 14 through 16. Our courts oppose the righteous, and justice is nowhere to be found. Truth stumbles in the streets, and honesty has been outlawed. Honesty has been outlawed. So even back then, talked about sin and the evil and wickedness that there was, and that's not changed. Truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. Imagine that. So many things that we go against that is evil, and they tell us we're horrible. The Lord looked and was displeased to find there was no justice. Here's the great thing about this. He was amazed to see that no one intervened to help the oppressed, so he himself stepped in to save them with a strong arm, and his justice sustained him. Okay, and it goes on to say what he does. Let's talk about Jesus. Verse 20, the Redeemer will come to Jerusalem to buy back those in Israel who have turned from their sins, says the Lord. That's Jesus when he came the first time. And we're going to get to the second coming here in a second. Here's another thing about on your timeline. When will the violence disappear for Jerusalem and those of us who will be there? So we will be in Jerusalem after the second coming. So that's where we will be living for 1,000 years. And we'll get to that in Revelation if you don't know what that means. So Jerusalem will be beautiful, and then violence will disappear. So all this kind of goes together. Chapter 60, verse 5. This is not right. Has to be 59. Nope, that's right. Your eyes will shine, your heart will thrill with joy, for merchants from around the world will come to you. They will bring you the wealth of many lands. Okay, and then we go on to verse 8, 9, and 9. Okay, and what do I see flying like clouds to Israel? Flying like clouds to Israel. This can only be airplanes, but a little odd that they say flying like clouds. There are ships from the ends of the earth, from lands that trust in me, led by the greatest ships of Tarshish. They are bringing the people of Israel home from far away, carrying their silver and gold, and they will honor the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has filled you with splendor. Okay, so in this part, is this the May 15th, 1948, when they're coming back from World War II? No, this is nonstop people coming back to Israel. So it's not that every Jew in the world is going to be in Jerusalem at that time. No, it's just a nonstop procession until the very end. Here's verse 10. Foreigners will come to rebuild your towns, and their kings will serve you. For though I have destroyed you in my anger, I will now have mercy on you through my grace. Your gates will stay open day and night to receive the wealth of many lands. The kings of the world will be led as captives in a victory procession. So that's definitely at the second coming, or during the 1,000-year reign, where people, the leaders of the world, are going to come. So there's still evil in the land in the 1,000-year reign. So the second coming happens. Jesus comes. He lays waste to everybody. But then there's still people alive who are saved. They have children. We will be there. And we will reign with Christ for 1,000 years. But those children are going to grow up. And that will be their normal, that they will see Jesus. And there'll be millions of people, if not billions of people, born during that time that follow Christ. But yet evil is still in the land and sin is still allowed. And during that time, another rebellion will take place in the 1,000-year reign. So this is talking about the leaders of the world will still come to Jerusalem because that's the only place they're going to be able to do business. And yet they're still not very happy about it. So there's this evil during that time period. That's later on. We'll cover that. Verse 18. This is during the 1,000-year reign, or violence will disappear. Violence will disappear from your land. The desolation and destruction of war will end. Salvation will surround you like city walls, and praise will be on the lips of all who enter there. Okay, so 1,000-year reign, you could say that there's no violence for Jerusalem after the second coming, but wars will end at the end of the 1,000 years. So it's kind of hard to place that in your timeline. All right, now let's get into some really cool stuff. Verse 19, no longer will you need the sun to shine by day, nor the moon to give its light by night. For the Lord your God will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. Your sun will never set, your moon will not go down. For the Lord will be your everlasting light. Your days of mourning will come to an end. All your people will be righteous. They will possess their land forever. For I will plant them with my own hands in order to bring myself glory. Revelation 22, verses 3 through 5. No longer will there be a curse upon anything, for the throne of God and of the Lamb will be there, and his servants will worship him. So this is at the end of the 1,000 year where everything's wiped out, and the New Jerusalem comes down. And they will see his face, and his name will be written on their foreheads. And there will be no night there, no need for lamps or sun, for the Lord God will shine on them, and they will reign forever and ever. Okay, so this is at the end of the 1,000 year reign. Okay, we're going to come back to the second coming here in a second. At the right time. Verse 22 of chapter 60. The smallest family will become 1,000 people, and the tiniest group will become a mighty nation. At the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen. So this is, even during the 1,000 year reign, there will be families, and they will be righteous. But there will be evil allowed. Jerusalem will be given a new name. This is the cool part. Chapter 62, 2 through 4. The nations will see your righteousness. World leaders will be blinded by your glory, and you will be given a new name by the Lord's own mouth. Never, verse 4, never again will we be called the forsaken city or the desolate land. Your new name will be the city of God's delight and the bride of God. For the Lord delights in you and will claim you as his bride. Okay, so Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you. That's what you did when you married back then. You went to the wife's dad and said, hey, I want to marry your daughter. He says, okay. And he says, okay, I'm going to go prepare a place for you, and then I'll come get you at the right time. So Jerusalem is the bride of Israel, and that's kind of where that terminology comes from. There's 2 more points. Here's something really awesome here. The word never again. So all these words are really important to note. 63 verse 8. No, 62 verse 8. I'm sorry. Wow. The Lord has sworn to Jerusalem by his own strength, I will never again hand you over to your enemies. Never again will foreign warriors come and take away your grain and new wine. So when is this? Well, this is at the second coming. Because people in Israel are going to scatter during the tribulation times. Remember, we're in the church age, and then the Antichrist rules in the 7 years of tribulation. The second coming happens, and Jesus rules for 1,000 years, and then a new heaven and new earth after that. The great white throne judgment happens before the new heaven and new earth. So what we're talking about here is when Christ comes the second time, Jerusalem's not going to be hurt. He's going to protect them from that day forward. So that's a cool thing. And then the second coming. Let's talk about the second coming. Where is it? I forgot to write this down. Chapter 63, the beginning of this, so very important to grasp what's happening here. Who is this who comes from Edom, from the city of Basra? It's so very important to understand, why is Jesus, this is talking about Jesus, at that point? With his clothing stained red, who is this in royal robes, marching in his great strength? Jesus says this, it is I, the Lord, announcing your salvation. It is I, the Lord, who has the power to save. Okay, and I'll get into the rest of this in a second. So why is he stained in blood? Why? Not because he was crucified on the cross. That's not what that is. Okay? Why is he in Edom coming from Basra? Because in the tribulation time, I alluded to this a second ago, in the tribulation time when the Antichrist rules, about halfway through, the Antichrist gets rid of this false peace, and the people in Jerusalem, the Jews, try to flee and run. Where do they go? We believe they go to the rock city in Petra, and they scatter into these areas, city of Basra, and the land of Edom. And when Christ comes the second time, he lays waste to the enemies. And he goes and he gets all the people, and he leads all the people back to Jerusalem. And why is his clothes bloodstained? Why are your clothes so red, as if you have been treading out grapes? He says, I have been treading the winepress alone. No one was there to help me. In my anger, I have trampled my enemies as if they were grapes. In my fury, I have trampled my foes. Their blood has stained my clothes. For the time has come for me to avenge my people, to ransom them from their oppressors. I was amazed to see that no one intervened to help the oppressed. You got to understand something. So if no one's there to help the oppressed, what are we doing right now? We're helping the oppressed. So something happens in the church age to the 7 years of tribulation, the rapture. We, the good, righteous people who are set apart and made righteous by Christ, are taken to heaven, and we are not there to help the oppressed. So Jesus comes and starts to take care of everything, comes and gets everybody, goes to Jerusalem, and he goes into Armageddon and lays waste to everybody else. All the armies come together at that point, okay? In my fury I have trampled my foes, their blood has stained my clothes, for the time has come for me to avenge my people, to ransom them from their oppressors. I was amazed to see that no one intervened to help the oppressed, so I myself stepped in to save them with my strong arm, and my wrath sustained me. I crushed the nations in my anger and made them stagger and fall to the ground, spilling their blood upon the earth. Revelation 20. Verses 13 and 15. He wore a robe dipped in blood, and his title was the Word of God. I'll just read 14 as well. The armies of heaven dressed in the finest of pure white linen. The armies of heaven dressed in the finest of pure white linen. We are the armies of heaven. We're there. We're given a white robe. As we get into Revelation, we're going to get into this stuff. Followed him on white horses. Yes, we're going to be on white horses along with Christ. Christ is not the only one on a white horse. Followed him on white horses. From his mouth came a sharp sword to strike down the nations. Justice. He will rule them with an iron rod. He will release the fierce wrath of God, the Almighty, like juice flowing from a winepress. I looked for this months ago, trying to find the winepress stuff, and it was here in Isaiah. So that right there, explaining why his robe is drenched in blood. Oh, I wanted to just tell you, if you have a study Bible, if you look at chapter 21, that's when the 1,000-year reign starts. I think it's titled that. No, wait a minute here. I'm sorry, that was chapter 19, verses 13 and 15. Wow, I am struggling today with the chapters. You know, it has chapter 20 in my book right here, so I wrote chapter 20 down, but it was chapter 19 that I read that from. Chapter 20 says the 1,000-year reign. So what happens right before the 1,000-year reign of Christ? Well, Christ comes the second time and wins the war, Armageddon. Church age, rapture, 7 years of tribulation, second coming of Christ, defeating the Antichrist, the false prophet, and Satan, bind Satan for 1,000 years. Antichrist and false prophet are the first two inhabitants of the lake of fire. They get thrown into the lake of fire. Satan's bound in the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. That 1,000 years is a reign of Christ, and all of us on earth with him. We are dressed in white robes. We were raptured up and we come down with him. We're on white horses and we go with him to Armageddon. He lays waste to everybody. And in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, he's here. People are being born during that time. Wickedness and evil sin still happens, but mostly it's a righteous place. And at the end of 1,000 years, Satan is let loose again to gather all the people who are rotten, and another war happens, and God comes down, the great white throne judgment, separates the people, the good and the bad. The ground opens up beneath them. They fall into the lake of fire with the false prophet and the Antichrist. And then the new heaven and new earth happen at that point. So, such an awesome thing. I'm sorry that took so long. That was the end of Isaiah, I think. No, I think there's a few more chapters. So, that's your day 208. Hope you had a great one. I'll see you later.